All right. So the more you talk, the longer you're going to be here. All right. So, kind of mentioning this before we start. I'm Professor Lantis. This is ECON B251. So hopefully you're in the right place. Introduction to microeconomic, fundamentals of business for economics. It's basically a microeconomics course. You might have noticed I already kind of at the beginning of every lecture, we'll kind of start Zoom. So I'll talk a little more about this later in the class as well. But every lecture is going to be recorded. Okay. So today, the computer up here is having some issues. So luckily, I always bring my laptop as a fail-safe. So I'll be kind of recording everything that I say. Also, everything that you see up here on the screen will also be part of the recording as well. Okay. I've got the kind of syllabus and the first week of slides pulled up. So if you were to go to our Canvas page, the home page, I try to set this up with kind of these modules, right? So today's class will basically be kind of like expectations, going through the syllabus, but I'll show you some of the different mechanics of the class on Canvas as well. So I set everything up in modules. Essentially, a module is a chapter, okay? So here I've got kind of the first lecture, right? This is the PowerPoint that I'm going to be going through here today. You can click on that, open it up, and go along with me if you want, but that's what will be being displayed up here for most of the class. I've also got the syllabus, the Word document up there as well. That's kind of what I'll be summarizing with these slides. So you might have already kind of looked through that a little bit, but that file will live there. These other things I'll kind of mention as we go through class, but every module's materials I'll kind of put up under the module on the homepage. You can always also find them under the Files tab on Canvas. So I've only got kind of the first module up here for you to be able to see. I've got module 2 kind of ready to go, but that's not until next week. But basically under the Files tab, I'll group everything together as well. So hopefully it's pretty easy to find. So you can always find PowerPoint slides, or we'll have weekly practice problems I'll talk about later. You can always find those under the homepage, or you can go to the Files tab. Okay. So we'll go back here to the homepage. I don't know. I just think this looks a little bit cleaner. Let's see. Let's go back to my slides and we will start working through these. Try to get you out of here a little early today, but I want to make sure we do spend a pretty good amount of time kind of setting up class expectations for the semester. So what are you going to need for this class? Right? That's a kind of start. The main thing is going to be this online e-text, which is through Top Hat. So we will use this for small module reading assignments, which I'll go more in depth into here in a second. But you're also going to need a laptop or a phone to be able to use in class. Okay. So, you know, I don't think it's a crazy expectation. I'm sure most of you don't leave anywhere without your phone, right? So you need something to be able to access Canvas while you're in class, right? And then obviously something to access Canvas and this Top Hat platform outside of class, but that could be a university computer, your own personal device, etc. Okay. Excuse me. And then I'll talk more about why you need that phone or tablet in class here in a second, but we'll be doing some kind of in-class quizzes. Okay. I also have just some suggested materials so that you might need throughout the semester. So this is just like an additional resource. It's got some microeconomic stuff, just kind of painted a slightly different way than I might go through it. So I sometimes will put up these links, just additional resources. I don't expect you to go through them, just kind of making you aware they are available and it's free. So I figured I'd put it in there, pretty low cost to me. You'll also need a calculator when it comes to the exams for this class. I mean, I guess technically the in-class quizzes, you probably have a calculator on your phone you could use. Think you can use a calculator on your phone for the exam though? Probably not, right? I can't have you all have your phone out during the exam, right? So you will need some type of calculator for those exams. I'll mention the dates here in a second. Off my top of my head, I believe it's September 25th in class and October 30th in class. You know, you shouldn't need anything more than a 4-function calculator: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. That's all you're going to need for those exams. If you can do that in your head, then you don't even need a calculator, right? But you know, might freeze up, get a little anxiety. Might be good to have one there. Now, in terms of like TI-84, all these graphing calculators where you can type notes into them, you can't use those, right? You can have like a scientific calculator. It's a little bit more advanced. It's not just a basic 4-function, but no type of a graphing calculator can you have for those exams. Is that clear? Okay. I mean, if you're like, oh, I bought this graphing calculator for college and now I can't use it in this specific class, You can go get like a calculator that you would need from the dollar store for this class. I mean, it's a pretty low cost. Okay. All right. So the other thing that you'll need is access to Canvas, because that's where these lecture slides that I'll be working through in class will live. Okay. I'll post them there. Generally, I'll post up a skeleton version of the slides. Now, I didn't do that for week 1. Everything on that complete version of the slides is what I'll be showing you here in class. Usually, I'll post a skeleton version where I'm leaving some things out that you might have to fill in as we go through things in class. Okay. Excuse me. And then I already mentioned this, but I'm recording every single lecture. So if you do have to miss class, I will have a YouTube playlist where I post all of these videos of class. Now, I wouldn't rely on these, and I wouldn't like start to plan to miss class. Why? Because this is generally what I will do. Okay. We'll be going through the slides. Zoom is recording all of this. What Zoom won't record is when I then tell you, okay, let's think about how these demand shifts work. And I'll draw out, I don't have this set up great for today. I'll draw out, okay, here's supply, here's demand shifts to the right. Don't worry about this. We'll cover all this later, but I'll be doing all of the work over here. This is not being captured in the recording. The audio is, so you'll hear me talking through it, but you won't have the kind of visual, sometimes I'll write out some math here that you won't have in the recording. So anything that I'm doing up here in the doc cam, which I'll be switching back and forth quite a bit. So there's a good amount of work that I'm doing in class that you're only going to get if you're in class. Okay. Now, obviously things come up. You have to miss class. It's great to be able to get notes maybe from another student. But you at least can always then look at their recording. It's not a perfect substitute for class. So we'll talk about substitutes and complements later on in the semester. It's not a perfect substitute at all, but at least you would have all of the audio from what we talked about in class, as well as me kind of talking through the slides, at the same time. Unfortunately, though, I'm not going to give you everything that we work on in class, because then what have I created? An incentive not to come to class if I can just watch it in my dorm room, right? Also, I know that you're not going to be as actively engaged if you do that. That's why I do that, right? I know that if you're in class kind of writing out, you're taking notes, right? Part of the learning process is I can watch somebody do something a million times until I actually draw out the graph myself. It's not going to sink in as much, right? So that's going to be kind of how those YouTube videos go. So I'll switch back. Where will these YouTube videos be? So we'll go to YouTube. I've already posted the first one. So some of you, how many of you have watched it? A couple of you. All right. So I thought some people might find if they look at the syllabus ahead of time. But if you go to YouTube, search Professor Lantis, I'm the first person that pops up. Apparently no other Professor Lantis is using YouTube like this, because I don't have a whole lot of hits and views. So once I click on this profile, here's our section. You might see other classes that you don't need to worry about, right? Because we're not enrolled in those. But this will be our section, our classes playlist. Here's that kind of first video I created, which was just like introducing myself in the class, which was just to basically be able to create the playlist to give the link in the syllabus before we started class day 1. After class today, I will post today's recording up here under this playlist, and then kind of just do that every single class throughout the semester. Now, I might not be I don't prioritize this as much, so they may not be posted immediately after class every single day, depending on my schedule and what pops up. But they'll be posted within like a 24-hour period for sure. It's just that they're not my priority. In class is my priority. I don't have to do this. This is something I'm doing for you if you have to miss class or you want to go back and listen. Oh, what did he say about that? Or how did we work through that? So it's just kind of an additional resource. I don't know why every professor doesn't do it, because guess how much extra work it takes me? Start the recording, stop the recording, right? That's all I have to do. So that's where all those videos will be. The link I have in the syllabus, I have on this slide, and I believe it's on another slide later on as well. So you should be able to kind of find it pretty easy, but also searching Professor Landis is an easy way to do it too. Okay. Any questions so far? Feel free to stop me at any point. All right. Also, when I ask questions, don't feel like you have to respond, but in a class of 300, head nods go a long way. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So what do you care about, right? How do you get the grade that you want in this class? Most of you are Kelly students. I know it's highly competitive. The differences between, so I'm in the econ department. I'm not in Kelly. So I don't have like some things I might say might be a little wrong in terms of like knowing the exact details of all the Kelly stuff. But I know there's like huge things about being a pre-admit versus a direct admit, and you have to get a certain grade to then get admit, all this stuff. So I know that grades matter a lot, right? They also matter a lot in scholarships or all these other different things that you're going to be applying for. So this class, admittingly, exams are a pretty big part of it, right? About 2/3 of your grade, 66%, come from exams. So this will be 2 midterm exams and a final, right? The final is going to be worth a little bit more than the midterms because this class, although it's not going to be a cumulative final, it's going to be comprehensive. Everything we do in this class builds on itself, right? So in module 12, think of modules as chapters, I'll be talking about using things that we discussed in module 3. So I'm not going to ask you module 3 type questions on the final, but knowing how demand and supply shift, it might change the equilibrium. I need to know that in order to understand some of the material that we're talking about in module 12 when it comes to like monopolistic competition markets. Okay? So that final exam will have a few more questions. The midterms will be, 25 multiple choice questions. And I think the final I have set to be 30. So a few more questions. You have a little bit more time, but that's why it's weighted a little bit more because it really is a comprehensive final, not cumulative, but comprehensive. Okay. So make sure, and I've got them summarized in another slide, those 2 midterms will be in class. Okay. So you need to make sure September 25th and October 30th, you are going to be in class to take that exam. Okay. Also, Canvas quizzes, and I'll go through each one of these different categories in more depth in here in a second. So Canvas quizzes will also have weekly quizzes over the modules. These are a total of 18%. So we'll have 12 of them. So, I mean, kind of split, take 18% divided by 12. But 18% is almost 20%. It's almost just like another midterm. So take these Canvas quizzes very seriously. Once again, I'll talk in a little more depth in them in a second, but they're a pretty big bulk of your grade. We're going to use these things called Canvas discussions. I'll talk about these as well, 10%. And then class module readings, those will be 2%. Doesn't sound like much. And then in-class participation or attendance will be 4%. So these last two, you might think, who cares, right? 6% of my total grade. Well, first of all, as I talk about the more here in a second, these are going to be easier points to make sure, to get, but not all based off correctness. And 6% might not sound like a lot, but at the end of the semester, when a B matters to you because you weren't a direct admit with Kelly and you have a B minus, 6% would push you from a B minus to a B, right? Or even a couple percent, right? Just taking these seriously, getting as many of these. They're not completely free points, but a lot of the points in these last 2 categories are essentially just, you're going to get points for doing it, right? So take these seriously because at the end of the semester, I don't change grades just because you don't have the grade that you want, right? And so getting some of these easier points, if you end up being on one of those cutoffs, that can kind of push you over the edge, okay? All right, so we'll go a little more in depth in each one of these categories. Other than exams, those are, I kind of already mentioned, those are pretty straightforward, multiple choice exams. We'll kind of look more at the types of questions as we get closer to those. In fact, I'll talk through here in a second exactly what this class will look like. But every single week, we're going to go through different modules. So this week, we've got like review of the syllabus today, and we'll basically just do all module 1 on Thursday. So after Thursday's class, I'm going to post on Canvas a quiz. I've already got it up there. So all I'm going to do is, so I've got this quiz, a little behind the scenes, sitting ready to go already. I'm just going to publish it and move it under this module 1 tab. So you can always find the quiz from the homepage. You can always also just go to the quizzes tab and the quizzes will show up here as well. Okay. Excuse me. Forgot to bring water today. So after class Thursday, I'll post that first quiz. You will then have until the end of the day, Monday, right? That Monday before we start the next module, right? Next Tuesday's class to complete that quiz. So you've got, depending on how you count it, right? 4 or 5 days to complete that quiz. Okay. So these quizzes will always be posted after class Thursday. We always do before we start the next module the following week, at the end of the day, that Monday. Okay. Is that clear? Any questions on that? So these Canvas quizzes will generally be 12 questions. So point and a half for each question, 18 total points. Excuse me. If your quiz is late, I don't dock it like a percent for how late it is. It's a 0. Deadlines are hard and fast in this class. I'm not going to play around with you were an hour late and you were 2 hours late. Well, why the hell am I only taking a little bit less from you if you were an hour as opposed to 2? You were both still late, right? Guess what happens if you show up to a meeting late and miss the meeting? Do you think you get grace from your employer? No, you might get fired, right? So you got to meet these deadlines. That's part of learning. Part of college in your first year is obviously learning content. But most of it, if I'm being honest, the most important thing you're going to learn this first year is time management and meeting deadlines. I mean, it's difficult to do when you have lots of things, moving parts, lots of different classes. I understand it's difficult, but these are going to be hard and fast deadlines. Okay, so at the end of the day, Monday, you should have always completed a quiz, which means once you start this quiz, I don't think I put it up here, it's in the syllabus, but you'll have 60 minutes to complete it. So you can't start and kind of go in and out of the quiz. You've got as soon as you start it, you've got 60 minutes to submit. Okay, and after 60 minutes, it'll automatically submit it for you. Okay, so that means I need to start this quiz. If I want to wait till Monday night to take it, I've got to start it by when? 10:59 if I want the full hour. Okay? So every single week, you should have one of these quizzes. Take them seriously. All right. So at the end of the semester, I'll drop your lowest 2. So we'll have 12 different modules throughout the semester, essentially. I'll drop your 2 lowest quizzes. That doesn't mean don't just do 2 of them. All right. Because inevitably on some of them, you might not do that well. Right. They're graded for correctness. Okay. It's not just simply, you don't get any points for simply answering a question here. You have to get it correct. Okay. So, you kind of work this out. Each quiz, 1.8 points. That take your best 10, 18 total % of your grade. I would also mention, on the exams, you can't have notes. Yeah.
I was going to ask, like, the exams, before the exams, we supposed to like exact topics, the exam or is it?
Yep. Give me 1 second. I'll touch on that. So I'm not ignoring your question. I really will. So every, what was I saying? Oh, so on the exams, you obviously can't have like notes in front of you. It's no open notes. You can't have a laptop. 300 students in these Canvas quizzes. There's no possible way for me to make sure that you don't. Even if I do lockdown browsers, what could you do? You guys are smart.
I've never cheated.
You've never cheated?
I've never.
Good answer. Tell me. But you could just have another computer right next to you. And so, am I going to start to grade people different? Because if you are ethical, then you're actually at a disadvantage for someone who's not, right? So when it comes to these quizzes, have all the resources of it. You have everything available to you. You should have your notes out. Have the slides pulled open from that week, right? I'll talk about CL sessions later. If you go to those, have all the notes that you took, have everything in front of you ready to go, right, for those quizzes. Earn as many of those points as possible in these environments where you can use these additional tools, okay? Now, on the exams, you won't have those available to you, so don't maybe don't get in the habit of using them as a crutch, but have those materials in front of you. Part of taking these quizzes, and these questions should look similar to the exam questions. So part of taking the quiz is not just for me to understand your knowledge of the content. That's more of what the exams are for. Part of answering these questions, well, you found in all these notes that you have the material that helps you answer this question better. So part of completing these quizzes, even though you're using some of these other resources, is the process of you're still in the process of learning that material that you were actually able to find it in the notes and kind of apply it to that problem. Is that just one attempt? So once you start it, you got 60 minutes to complete it, and that's your only attempt at that quiz. You can look at it after the due date. Because what else do you think is going to happen if I let you look at it? Yeah. So after the due date, you will have those quizzes available to you. So by the time we get to an exam, so generally the way this class will work, we're going to go through 4 modules. So the first 4 weeks, we'll go through module 1, 2, 3, 4. That 5th week, that Tuesday's class, by that point in time, I'll have posted a practice exam. We will go through as many of those questions as we can during class. Probably won't get through all of them. Usually I'll answer the questions that people have first. But that practice exam, we'll work through it on that Tuesday before the Thursday when we take the exam. All right, so 4 modules, review class, like review problems in class, and then the exam. Then we'll do the next 4 modules. So modules what? I combine modules 5 and 6, so it gets a little bit weird, but module 5 and 6 is in 1 week. 7, 8, 9, review practice problems in class, take the exam. Last 4 modules, review. Actually, usually we get 2 classes of review before the final because our final exam isn't in our usual class, it's during finals week. Okay. So we get a little bit more practice for that final exam. But yes, 4 modules on each exam. Yep. Any other questions before we keep moving here? Yeah. So they're a mixture. It's a good question. So the exams will be multiple choice. The Canvas quizzes are a little bit of everything. So there's some select all that apply. I don't use those a whole lot. There's some multiple choice. So I'd say probably about half the questions will be multiple. This first week, a lot more of them will be multiple choice. But afterwards, like half maybe multiple choice. There's some numerical response. So you have to tell me like what the number is. There's drop down. So there might be like multiple, if this happens, demand will increase, decrease, stay the same, and the equilibrium will increase, decrease. So something like that. So it's a kind of different variety of the types of Canvas questions that we use. And the reason I do that is because you all won't see the exact same quizzes. I use batches of questions for every single problem. So you might see increase, you might see decrease. I have the questions are asking for numerical response. I'm auto-generating like 50 different sets of numbers. So you're all seeing different numbers. It's the same question, right? You have to work through it the exact same way to get to the answer, but you would all have technically different answers. So unfortunately, you can't sit down with a friend and just, copy back and forth because you're going to have different quizzes. So say unfortunately, it's not unfortunate. You're going to learn better because of that, right? Okay. Do I have another question or thought maybe I saw a hand? Now I'm forgetting where it was. Okay. So these Canvas discussions, I won't spend a lot of time on them here today. When I post the first one, we'll kind of go through it in class. How many of you have done discussion boards in the past? Okay. So I won't waste a whole lot of time, but basically I'm going to have an initial post response. I used to use something called Packback. It costs you guys money. I'm going to try to do this all through Canvas now. This is probably going to be some easy points as long as you get on and complete these. Okay. So like for the first week, I've got how is AI impacting productivity? And I give you a couple different articles. I give you some like initial questions that you can kind of think about answering, but then you respond to my initial post with your thoughts on this subject or topic. And without going through the exact assignment, I also might have you access like a database in that first one. So you might have to report some numbers from that database for a specific country or time period that kind of back up whatever your response to my initial post was, kind of give it some support. So it'll be things like that. That will be your initial response. So generally that will take a little bit more work. Like I said, going to this outside data source, mentioning some of the data in your response will get you kind of those full points. And I'll be very clear in each one what you need to do to earn those full 10 points for your initial response. Once you post your initial response to what I have posted, you will then go and be able to see everybody's who's posted, and you respond to 2 other students. And each one of those responses with 5 minutes. So this is meant to, like, in a room of 300, we don't get a lot of discussion in class amongst all of you, right? And so this is a way we can kind of create some of that. It's also a good way of like taking some real world, like I said, I'll be posting like articles from Forbes and things like that. You can actually see how some of what we're talking in class could be applied. And then also, what do you do? Like if most of you are like in Kelly, business kind of related majors, you're going to be working on teams where you're like, here's this product we're trying to sell. Who's it gonna be attracted to? What types of consumers? You might have some ideas on you. Oh, no, we probably wouldn't be as attracted to that consumer base as it. So, right, you're going to be doing a lot of discussion in teams once you get out there in the real world. And so this is trying to kind of start kind of building that skill. Okay. Like I said, I'll talk more through this once I post the first one. It won't be until after next week's classes. So that first one will probably be posted after next Thursday's class. Generally, I'm always going to give you at least a week to kind of get on and get these done, probably more closer to like 2 weeks. So generally I'll like post them on a Thursday and then they'll be due like the next Friday. That'd be the shortest time period. Sometimes I might even give you, I'll post it Thursday. It's not due for another 2 Fridays, right? So you might have like a pretty wide kind of range, but I'll make the due dates very clear. They're always going to be on, where's it at? Do I have it up here? Yeah. Fridays at the end of the day. So I try to keep everything in this class, the due dates being at the end of the day. At 11:59. So we'll talk through more of this specifics when I have that first assignment deployed on Canvas. And then, you know, like you said, most of you have done discussion boards before, so I think it'll be pretty straightforward. These should be some easier points. If you just get on and take them seriously and type out a thoughtful response and include the things that I want you to do, like for that first one, just cite some data from this website. This should be pretty straightforward. Okay. Now it is the first time I've used the Canvas discussions, so bear with me a little bit if I'm still kind of learning exactly all the little tips and tricks with it. I think I've got a pretty good understanding of it, but just to be completely transparent, it is my first time using it in this class. So also I should mention at this point, because I think I forgot to earlier, this is my third year here at IU, so I'm still learning some things about the university and how things work, but I've been teaching this class. I was over at Ball State for 8 years before this. Every semester I've taught a microeconomics course. So I got this down pretty good. I like where it's at, so things should work pretty smoothly. And if you don't know where Ball State is, that means you're probably not from Indiana. But you know, if you have questions about that, or I don't know, parents went there or something, always like to meet some chirps. So the other category we had for part of your grade is module readings. These are a very small percent, 2%. And it's because I don't want them to be costly if you get these questions wrong. So the module readings are going to be on Top Hat. So every chapter on Top Hat is going to have questions embedded into it. So if we go here, some of you already found this and had some questions on, you were panicking, you thought it was due before class, I can't answer it. I'll explain here in a second. So when you're on Canvas, go back. I have these, I'll post the module reading. So generally I'm always going to post the module reading after Thursday's class for the next module. So the module readings will all be done in advance, which is why module 1 is not assigned to you, because I couldn't have it posted before today's class and have you work on it without being able to explain it to you, right? So this is just set for review. This first module is the exception. It's a little bit different. You should be able to just review it. So you'll see that here's the text. It's got these questions embedded into it. Now, because this one's set to review, you can't respond to some of these questions, right? These are just kind of showing you the examples, but I wanted to make sure you still had chapter 1 or module 1 of the text, right? So I'm not using module 1 as an assignment, but what I will do is the very first one I will assign. Usually I would assign it after Thursday's class. I'm actually going to post it after class today. Will be module 2. So the module readings will always be posted before we cover that material. So when I get back to my office, I'm going to create what looks very similar to this, but it'll be under module 2. It'll be the module 2 reading. You can then go on. Some of these questions, where are they at? There we go. You'll type your response out. Some of them are just opinion-based. Like this one, you just get credit for answering it. That's an easy point. Just get on and getting it done. Now, some of them will be graded for correctness, right? So there is an actual correct answer. There's some multiple choice questions. Sometimes there's some select all that apply. Those will be, you can only earn the point for that question if you get it correct, right? Excuse me. But I don't want them to be a huge cost, which is why they're only 2% of your overall grade, because I realize you're not going to be experts the first time you just read the text and kind of go through these questions, right? But I'm going to give you 3 submissions on these, which if I've got multiple choice and there's 3 answers, even if I just skim the text, I probably can rule out 1 or 2 of the answers. I'm going to be able to kind of guess my way to that correct. So you're not going to have to be experts by the time you get done answering these questions. And like I said, some of them are just opinion-based questions. You'll just get credit for answering them. And those will be very clear. Like I said, like the multiple choice ones are the ones that you've got to make sure you get correct. These open response where it's like asking you an opinion, those will just be free points essentially, as long as you type a response in here. Okay. So those will always be due the Monday night before we start covering that material. So I'll put module 2 up this afternoon. You've got to get it done by Monday night. And we then go through module 2 in class next week. So the way I'm using these assignments are a way to get you to be used to the terminology that I'm going to be using to kind of prime your brain. I don't expect you to be experts after answering these questions, but you'll be ready in class. When we talk about this, we can go more in depth and it makes class a lot more effective. Now, any questions before I keep moving here? Okay. So we don't have module 1. That's not an assignment. The very first one will show up this afternoon will be the module 2 reading. There will be 11 module readings throughout the semester. I'll drop your lowest. Okay. So we're going to go through 13 modules, but I combine 5 and 6. So we'll talk more about that when we get closer to module 5 and 6. But there'll be 11 module readings assigned to you. I'll drop your lowest at the end of the semester. Okay. Now the questions also aren't meant to be very difficult. A lot of them are pretty easy. And like I said, you get 3 submissions on every single one. So if you get it right, it lets you know. So you don't have to like go back through and rework all of them. It's the same set of questions. So you only have to kind of correct the ones that you got wrong when you're making that second and third submission if you want to. Okay. You don't have to make a second and third, but if you don't get them all right, I would highly suggest it, right? Now there's also going to be some graphing questions. Let's see. I think there's some right here. So this is the first semester I've used these. I've been told I trust Top Hat. They're very good at what they do. I'm just putting this out as a disclaimer. This is the first semester we've used these graphing questions. If you have any issues like on the technical side with them, please let me know. They've tested a lot of different web browsers, a lot of different types of computers, and they're pretty confident that there shouldn't be any. But I'm always very skeptical when I hear that there won't be any technical issues, because there inevitably always is, right? So just be aware that these are new. Let me know if anything is kind of weird with them for you, so I can kind of get them changed for future semesters. But I've worked through all of them. They seem, at least on my device, to be working pretty well. I just want to throw that out there as a thing to, to be fully transparent. Okay. All right. So anything else I want to say about these module readings? So not every module has the exact same number of questions, but they're all going to be scaled to be worth 4 points. So at the end of the semester, I take your best 10, or I drop the lowest one. So it'll be that total of well, not 4%. Sorry, 0.4 points. Hold on. That's not what I want. This number's not right. I'll have to edit this. I know that it's right in the syllabus. Sorry. These aren't 4 points. These are 2. There we go. Because then when I multiply 2 by 10, it's a total of 20 points, or 2% of your overall grade. So I'll get those slides updated to kind of reflect that. Okay? I know what happened. I copy and pasted from this slide, which we'll go through in a second. So we got these module readings, your 10 best now. This is going to be kind of the steps to getting registered if you haven't already. So how many people have already registered on top? Okay, so this won't apply to you. And if you haven't done this, it's not the end of the world. But if you're registering, using your IU email address also avoids a lot of some potential technical issues of getting your grades synced up to Canvas. It usually isn't an issue. And this just goes as a general suggestion. Use your IU email when it comes to your classes. Always default to using that. Okay, it just makes a lot more seamless when we kind of try to get things moved over to Canvas. Okay. But once you get registered, you create your username and password. Every course has a join code. So I have 2 different sections of this class. So if you're doing this with someone else in a different section, don't put in the same join code. You need to put in this section's join code, which is right here on this slide. Okay. Once you do that, it gets you enrolled in the course. If you have any issues, I just put a support link, kind of a tech support link in the Top Hat. But usually I don't have any, anyone really have any issues with kind of getting registered. And we can kind of get going with those. Like I said, I'll post that module 2. Usually I wouldn't post it until after Thursday's class, because I want to kind of get that first one out there so you can start playing around with it. I'll get it up after today's class. All right. Any other questions about that? All right. So this is where I kind of copied and pasted the 4% and forgot to change it. So the last category, where 4% of your overall grade is going to be in-class participation and attendance. So what I'm going to do, so there's going to be 24 classes throughout the semester where I use these in-class quizzes. I will drop the lowest 4. So the reason I do that is because I don't want to have to, if you get sick for one class period, or you have to go to a funeral with 600 students, so I have 300 student sections, I can't double check documentation on every little thing that someone might miss class for. So that's why I bake those 4 days in. I'm going to drop your 4 lowest. Those will basically be like sick days. If you were in a job, which hopefully all of you are one day, right? You're going to have sick days that you have to use, right? That's what those 4 days are, right? So I don't want to have to make judgment calls. Some people are better at faking doctor's notes than others, and so that's why I baked it in. Now, if it's extended illness, an extended period of time where you're going to miss, like, so you get a car accident. I had someone one semester, they were like in the hospital for 2 weeks. Obviously, we can work something out there. I would, maybe not grade you out as many classrooms because that's an extenuating circumstance. I would need some documentation for something like that. So if it's something that's going to cause you to miss multiple classes, reach out to me and we can kind of work on something, but I will need documentation even if that's the case. But any of these kind of like small one class illnesses or things you have to miss one class for, that's why I bake in those lowest 4 that I drop. Okay. Thank you for your question on my spiel.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, let's.
So for religious holidays would probably be baked into this kind of same thing. Right? Just be one of those 4, just like in a job, right? You would, if it's important to you, you're gonna have to take that day off, and that's
We get paid vacation.
If you get paid vacation from me, I wish I had that much money. How will these in-class quizzes work? Basically, just by responding, you're going to get half the points for the day. And then for getting them correct, you're going to get the other half. Okay. So each class is going to be worth 2 points. So generally be like, if I have 2 questions, you get a point for just responding. And then if you get them both correct, you get full 2 points. If you get 1 correct, you get 1.5 out of 2, etc. So it's generally going to be like 2 or 3 questions at most, right? Sometimes it might only be 1 question for the day. What I'm going to do, it'll be related to the content that we're covering. Sometimes I'll use them at the end, beginning, middle of class, depends on what we're covering. So what I will do is on Canvas, I'll have a quiz ready to go. When I want to go through it, I'll publish it and have it set to be due in like 4 or 5 minutes, right? So then you'll have 4 or 5 minutes to work on, get it submitted in class. Sometimes I'll be very helpful and I might even like give you some hints as you're working on it that might help lead you to the correct answer. They're not meant to be difficult points to get, right? So if you're in class paying attention, you're probably going to get the full 2 out of 2 points for most class periods, right? So showing up to class, paying attention, these should be easy points. Once again, 4% of your overall grade, but 4%, that bumps you up to like the next B- to a B or a B to a B+, right? If you're kind of getting all those full points as opposed to like missing. Now, I would also say, and sometimes, I should let someone do this so that, I don't know, whatever. But you can't just sit in your dorm room and hit, I mean, I guess if you want to, you don't have to technically be in class. You could sit in your dorm and refresh Canvas the entire time during class, but why the hell wouldn't you just show up to class at that point? But I guess technically I don't have like any geolocators on your phones to make sure you're in class, but I will just like publish them in class, have them set to be available for 4 or 5 minutes, and then it's going to be closed out. So you really do need to be in class because, like I said, I do them at various points during the lecture. Is that any questions on that? And that's why you need to have a phone or a laptop you can access Canvas from in class. Okay. All right. So just in terms of communication, setting up some expectations for the semester. What time do we start? Try to get this on. First thing, if it's not content related, it's like a due date or how much, what percent, check the syllabus first for most things. Second, if you have questions, if they are content related or they're just related to class, you couldn't find them in the syllabus. Basically, I have 2 GAs or graduate assistants for this class. You can kind of email them next. If they can't answer your question, they'll usually forward it to me, or you can reach out to me after that. Okay. Now, you don't always have to email them. They're very helpful. They're more likely to get you a quicker response. My inbox fills up pretty quick. And like on a day like today, I'm teaching all day. I won't even get to look at my email until sometimes the next day. So if you want a quick response, emailing them first is going to be the best way. And then if you have a question that you have to ask me, you obviously can always email me. My email's in the syllabus. I think it's on one of the first slides too. Just rlantis@iu, pretty easy. And then kind of that, I've already mentioned about that course YouTube page. That will be where I post all of those kind of video recordings. Those also, you can maybe go back and listen to those. If you have a question that maybe I answered in class, you can always go back and review it there. Okay. All right. The next thing I want to mention are these collaborative learning sessions. So we have a very big class with 300 people. I can't give like a lot of like one-on-one interaction here. Also, the material is tough, and I realize it might take some more practice with it. So the CL sessions are going to be held on Monday and Thursday nights. and this won't start until next Thursday. So I've got the dates here. What, the 4th and the 8th will be the first Thursday, Monday for these CL sessions. They're basically like review sessions of that week's material. So next week, so there won't be one for week 1 because we're just doing syllabus review, and we will have a set of practice questions. So when I was talking about those quizzes earlier, on Canvas, I also had up these practice problems. So they're just a Word document. It's the kind of questions you're going to see on that Canvas quiz. So it's not the exact questions, but they're going to be the types of questions. So reviewing these practice questions before you take the quiz is also a really good idea. Yeah. Hold off on your question until I go through my whole spiel about it, just because I probably won't answer it. Okay. So here's kind of my set of questions. First week, there's not as many because these are the content. We'll just be doing content related stuff on Thursday. So that first week's quiz will be about half of like syllabus class related stuff. And the other half will be the content we cover on Thursday's class. Usually this will be like 12 to 15 practice problem questions over the module content from that week. I will also not just give you the questions. I also tell you what the correct answers are. So if this is all you want, that's fine, right? You'll know what the correct answer is. You can kind of work through, okay, how do I get to that correct answer? But these CL sessions, and I always just post those on the files tab, same kind of thing as the slides. They'll show up under the module tabs and under the files tab. What these CL sessions will do is I give them detailed solutions to those practice problems, and they work through as many of those as possible in a 50-minute time block. Usually they can get through all of them. And they might mention like other things along the way. So like, even though this was like an increase, I'll then also give them like a solution. Well, what if this was a decrease? And kind of they'll, can work through some like similar questions, but slightly different. So every single one of these CL sessions, they're going to be reviewing these practice problems, showing you how you get to that correct answer. Yeah, so they will be during these 3 time blocks, 50-minute time blocks on Monday and Thursday nights. Okay. I have the locations. I'm trying to sort out before I post them who will be at what location. So I have some undergraduates who lead these sessions. Don't lead every single one of these. There, in fact, will be multiple rooms at each time slot. Right. So it'll be these time slots and days, but there will be multiple locations during each one of those time slots. Okay. I should have that ironed out by the end of the week. I know, like I said, I have the where they're at. They're all over the place though. So I can't do it from memory because they're all a little bit different. So once I have these, I will post a file kind of with the summary of, you already have the days and times, but what locations will be available at each one of those days and times. And then they'll start next week, like I mentioned. Now, if you attend one of these, so you only need to attend one each week, you'll earn 0.15% extra credit or 1.5 points. Doesn't sound like much, but there should be 12 of these across the semester. That adds up to a total of 1.8%. Once again, it's kind of like the module readings. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's, it's extra credit can be enough to bump me up to that next letter grade. Right? If I'm on the edge, 1.8% could mean a lot to me. Now, also, it's a very small amount of extra credit. I attach something to it because I know how economics, incentives work. I want you guys to go, and I want you to know how important these are. It's going to be really helpful for the learning process to see those problems work through for you, help you do better on the quizzes, also on the exams. And so I really, how many of you have taken like, anyone's taken like data courses in high school or have any of this? So who's heard of the word regression? Yeah, if I regress CL session attendance on exam performance, highly positively correlated. Right now, there's some selection issues there we could dive in, but I know that these are useful and beneficial to you. So that's why I really want you to go. So I'm attaching at least a small amount of extra credit to it to try to give you even more of a push out the door to get to these. Okay. So throughout this week, try to look at these. And I realize locations might matter. So I will try to get something posted up. I'll definitely get something posted up tomorrow with the locations attached. They get those a little bit later to me. It's hard to find building space on campus, especially in the first week. Everyone's trying to be very protective of their rooms. And so now that I have those, I get that might matter. But what I've got on Canvas, and let me go in right now. So this is kind of like what the quizzes will look like. This is not worth any points, but it looks like kind of like, kind of like what the quizzes will look like. So let me go in here. I'm going to edit this real quick because I think I had it set to be available even earlier. So what? It's, yeah, there we go. So it should now be published. You can now access it either through the quizzes page or it should be there on the homepage. It asks you your 3 preferred days and times, right? So you only need to attend one of these each week. You can attend a different session at a different location or a different time or a different day every week if you want to. Now, you're only going to earn that 1.5 points or 0.15% once during that week. So there's no advantage of attending like 3 or 4 sessions. You don't earn any additional points, right? So you only get the points for attending one of those a week. Now, the purpose of this poll is I don't want any excuses. I'm kind of covering my end of things, that if like someone made a grade appeal, if I'm being completely honest why I'm doing this, I could say, well, no, I went through the process and guaranteed everybody had a CL session, they had a seat in. Now, in practice, they're never going to be so full that there aren't available seats, but it's a way that I can, like I said, kind of covering my end to make sure I can guarantee that during this day and time, you will have a reserved seat at this location. Okay. So I realize the locations might matter. You don't need to answer this today. I think I've got the due date set to be the 31st of August, the end of the day. That then gives me some time to kind of get you guys sorted into each one of these different days, times, and locations. But basically, give me what your most preferred day and time is. Then your second most preferred day and time. Third most. I will do my best to get everybody into their first preferred day and time slot, right? I also have a follow-up question, and be honest with me. I'm not going to look at individual responses here and like judge you. If you don't think you'll go to these at all, tell me that, because then I don't want to give you priority over someone who thinks they're going to go every single week, right? So the fourth question here is just how often do you plan to attend? That kind of is like my tiebreaker when I'm sorting your names out in these different days and times, okay? Now, once again, I will post this list. It's not a like you have to go at this day and time. It's just a thing I can guarantee you there will be a seat available for you at that day and time. But in practice, they're never full, especially as the semester gets going. You can kind of switch week to week if your schedules change. It's a big choice. So did I answer the questions that people had, or do you still have a question on it? Any other questions on these? Yeah. Yeah, I gave them all the exact same solution file. They're going to be reviewing the same set of practice questions, so it shouldn't be any different. Yeah, so when you go, you'll have to sign in at the beginning and the end, then cross-validate the names, and then I have an Excel file where they log the attendance week to week. Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah.
So will we be not like, does this start on Thursday and on Monday, or does it start on Monday? Like
They're only 50 minutes long. So there's one that meets. No, these aren't maybe 4 days. No, so these are like maybe I'm misunderstanding your question.
No,
there are.
I mean like for 1 week is all days the same, or is it like Thursday?
Well, we don't have any classes in between, right? We have class on Thursday. These meet Thursday night. We don't have class again until Tuesday. So there's going to be no new material. Yeah, Mondays and Thursdays will be the same exact material, right? Because we don't have class in between that time. Yep. I see what you mean now. Okay. I also put up a link. It's not necessarily the collaborative learning session, but it's additional economics tutoring that you can kind of have as a resource. So it's not through Kelly, so you might not be aware of it. It's through the econ department. But I've got a link up here, and there's a lot of like undergraduates who kind of, you schedule with and kind of meet with, but it's free tutoring. So I wanted to kind of put that up. If you need that at any point in the semester, you've got this link to look back on. Okay. Okay. So setting up some expectation stuff. I think that should pretty much cover it in terms of like grades, the assignments that we're going to be using. Are there any questions related to that before I kind of go in a slightly different direction? Okay. And what we're supposed to get out of here at 12:25. So I'll try to get you out of here a little bit early. Still got, yeah, we'll get out of here early. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff up here on the slide, but I'll just kind of boil this down. We're going to be talking about a lot of different topics in this class. Now, most of them are going to be kind of business related, but I really like to take microeconomics and apply it to like what I see happening in the real world. So we'll talk about like government actions. We'll talk about taxes, sin taxes. Should we tax this good versus that good? Well, we're not saying one is right or one is wrong. We're just trying to analyze what the impacts will be if the government does this or that. We're not trying to say one political party. I'm not trying to make any political party statements. We're just saying if they choose to do this, what are going to be the implications of that action, right? We might talk about communism, not in this class, 252. You would like talk about the difference between a command economy, communism, and capitalism. Communism has all this like negative connotation. Nothing in this class that I will talk about is meant to be adversarial at all, or is meant to be, in any way like disrespectful to anybody. I get a little bit lax with the way I talk about things sometimes. I probably should have a little bit better of a handle on it, but my intent is never to say anything that would be disrespectful to anybody. If I ever do, please, by all means, let me know. And I want to make sure I don't say things in that way ever again, right? But we also are going to talk about things like, that you might have a preference for more than I do. Like I might think that I want to tax cigarettes because I think that they're evil. But if you really like to smoke cigarettes, well, that's very, that's very discriminatory towards someone who has a tobacco addiction, right? Or whatever, nicotine, whatever you're addicted to. So once again, this also extends to you. When we're doing these Canvas discussions, I'm going to try to be as civil and respectful of you as possible. Try to be as civil and respectful of each other as possible when we're kind of doing these Canvas discussions. Okay. Excuse me. All right. So I've got kind of my summary of dates here. I don't think there's anything we really need to add here. I've got the 2 midterm dates. Make sure you can be in class on both those days. The final exam date, I don't choose that. It's locked in. So you shouldn't have any other issues with any of your other classes. Like university guarantees that. That's why that is this section's day and time for the exam. And we'll talk more about that. We might not be in this classroom for the final. They sometimes put us in another room. So we'll just see once we get closer to then. They haven't let me know. They don't let us know until we get closer to finals week. Okay. So how do you be successful in this class? Read the book and the module questions, right? So I know you can probably skim the book, go through these user 3 submissions and not think a lot about it. But the more that you kind of take it seriously and prime your brain, the more effective and productive class is going to be for learning the material. Okay. So take those seriously. Once again, 2%. But that 2% can matter a lot at the end of the semester, okay? Show up to class, right? Once again, you can basically earn, especially since I dropped those 4 lowest, if you show up to every class, you're basically going to get 100% of the points for in-class participation. I can't guarantee you will get all, but you're going to be very close, right? Like I said, the questions aren't meant to be super difficult that I give you in class. It's more to be kind of checks over what we talk about, maybe something we just talked about in class, okay? Using those practice problems, and once we get closer to the exams, those practice exams I give you, it'll basically be like an exam, like 25 multiple choice questions that looks very similar to the exam. Obviously, it's not exact same, but it's the types of questions. And I can't emphasize enough how going through the practice problems week to week help you on the quizzes, help you on better on the quizzes. That helps your learning for doing better on the exams. And going through these practice exams also is very, very beneficial. Right? Take the Canvas quizzes seriously. We kind of already mentioned. Have all those materials in front of you. Right? So it's 100% of the shots that you don't take. So show up to class, do every single module reading, right? Try to take all those quizzes seriously when you're sitting down to take them for those 60 minutes. Yeah. Also, I just remember I failed to mention something. So for those module readings, I said I usually like to have the due dates be at the end of the day. So they are due at the end of the day on Monday. But because there's a sync issue, it will count everyone as late. And then I said, if you're late, you get a 0. So technically it'll show up on Canvas to be 11:59. On Top Hat, the due date is actually set to be 11:50. There has to be a buffer time. Otherwise it can't sync up to Canvas without treating it as late. And then everybody panics and thinks they got a 0. And so, hopefully you're not waiting up until those last 9 minutes to do it anyways. But I do want to mention there is a little discrepancy there between the Top Hat being due at the end of the day. It's technically due at 11:50 instead of 11:59. And I think that was on the slide. I think I just forgot to mention it. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions in and out of class. I get on a roll sometimes when I'm talking. Stop me. I need it probably sometimes, right? So if you have questions, that probably means in a room of 300, someone else probably has a similar question. So don't be afraid to ask questions in class. Also, outside of class, My office hours, Monday and Wednesday from 10 to 1. I can guarantee I'll be in my office during that time. It's a big campus. If that doesn't work for you, you can also try to schedule something with me at a different time. Mondays and Wednesdays are going to be my most available to meet. Sometimes Fridays, but my Fridays, I have a lot of meetings and other things I schedule. So every Friday looks a lot different. It's just kind of week to week. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm not usually available. I teach basically all day. Okay. So my Mondays and Wednesdays, I can guarantee I'll be in my office 10 to 1. Usually I'm there between 8 and 4. I've got different meetings scheduled week to week, but I try to keep my Mondays and Wednesdays pretty open. So if that time doesn't work for you, you can send me an email. We can try to find another time that works. Also, don't feel like you have to physically come to my office during office hours. I put up a virtual link that I'll open up every single office hour, and I'll have it kind of running on my computer, because if no one's there, I'm usually working. And then if you ever log on and like I'm working, just speak loudly. I'll have the volume turned up. Oh, okay, someone's here. Or let me know if you want to that and you're popping in. That's fine too. I don't mind an email. I'm going to pop into the virtual office hours at such and such a time during office hours. I know that the campus is big and I don't want you to have to walk 25 minutes, depending on where you're at, if you don't have to. So by all means, feel free to stop by. I love it when people stop by during my office hours. But if you want to do the virtual option as well, I always make that available. Okay. All right. And I put up the GAs. We had that in an earlier slide already. Oh, my office is over in Wiley Hall, which is that way. So if you go out here and kind of go up past Ballantine, it's a little brick building. It's pretty small. I'm up on the 3rd floor. It's about a 5-minute walk from here. So help me help you, right? I use me as a resource. I know a lot of professors shouldn't say this negatively, but like, especially in Kelly, they're very busy people and they're not always as available and able to kind of meet one-on-one. I like to be as much as possible as I can with 600 students. It makes it a little bit difficult, but still, I think you could ask a lot of my old students. Like, I'm pretty available outside of class to kind of meet and discuss things. Okay. So next class, we're going to go through kind of module 1, and it'll be just like content related. Okay. So that first quiz will be what we covered today, review of the syllabus, things like that. So having the syllabus open when you take that first quiz, having the first week of slides open will be a really good thing. We'll do all content stuff on Thursday's class. Now, before you get too excited, I've got a couple things before we get out of here to go through. And then we'll kind of end class. So I get, a lot of you are freshmen. You're in Kelly, stressful, competitive. You have a lot of other classes going on. I realize we're racing in the semester pretty quick here. There's a lot of new, right? So this is my son. So also give me a little grace. Outside of the times of 8 to 4 every day during the week, I try to spend as much time with him as possible at nights and not check my email. I'm working on the whole work-life balance thing. My wife probably says I don't have it down yet. But I may not be answering emails between, after 4 p.m. most days. Between 8 and 4, I will try to respond as quickly as possible, though. So not 9 to 5, 8 to 4. I'm shifted a little bit earlier. Also, I realize with all of your classes, and especially this one, there's a lot of stuff that I mentioned that we're doing today. It's probably like drinking from a water hose these first few weeks. So I'm trying to start off easy. Right? That's why we're not just strictly doing kind of content here in this first week. We're doing a review of the syllabus here today, getting you out a little bit early. And then also remember, in class, try to have fun with what we're talking about. A lot of microeconomics can be applied to the real world. So if you're interested in marketing, you're interested in sports, there's a whole thing. I do sports economics research, so I publish some articles. You can apply it to anything common. You can apply it to anything that you want, right? So make sure you're having fun in your classes, but also make sure you're having a little bit of fun outside of class as well. When I say a little bit, you're only 18, 19 once. Make sure you guys are having a lot of fun this first year, okay? All right. I will see you all on Thursday.